I discovered my friend had been stealing from me for years, but the moment I confronted him, it all unraveled. I had always considered myself lucky in life. I had a tight-knit circle of friends, people who, over the years, had become more like family to me than anything else. We'd been through everything together, the ups, the downs, the heartbreaks, the triumphs. But the one person I considered to be my closest friend was Ben. We had known each other since college, and over the years, we had grown inseparable. We shared an apartment for a while after graduation, attended countless concerts together, and even traveled abroad on a whim, just to experience new places and make new memories. Ben had always been the life of the party, charismatic, easygoing, always the one to crack jokes and make everyone feel comfortable. He had an infectious energy that made him the center of attention wherever he went, and I loved that about him. But over time, I started to notice little things that felt off. It wasn't anything big at first, just small inconsistencies, things that I brushed off as nothing. But as the years passed, these little oddities began to pile up, and I couldn't ignore them any longer. It started with money. Small amounts at first, maybe a few bucks here or there. I'd lend him a couple of dollars and he'd say, "I'll pay you back next week, I promise." Weeks would pass and I'd forget about it. But when I asked him again, the story was always the same. "Oh, I'll get you next time. I've just been a little tight on cash lately." I wasn't the type of person to keep track of every dollar my friends owed me, but as time went on, I began to realize that it wasn't just small amounts of money. Ben had started borrowing larger sums from me. "Hey, I need to borrow a few hundred for the rent this month. Can you help me out?" I didn't hesitate to lend him the money, thinking he'd return it like always, but it was never quite as simple as he made it sound. He always had an excuse. His job wasn't paying enough, his car broke down, or his student loans were higher than expected. It seemed reasonable at first. After all, we were in our late 20s just getting started in our careers, and the financial strain was something we both understood. But over the months, the pattern didn't change. Every time I lent him money, the repayment would stretch longer and longer. And when I asked, he'd act like it was no big deal, brushing it off with a joke or a quick diversion. But it wasn't just the money. There were the small, seemingly insignificant things that didn't add up. One night, we were hanging out at his place, drinking beers and watching a game, when I casually mentioned an item I had been eyeing online, a limited edition video game console I was thinking about buying. The next day, when I checked my account balance, I noticed something strange, an unexpected withdrawal. I thought I had made a purchase, but when I checked the receipt, it turned out that the transaction had come from Ben's account, not mine. At first, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was a mistake, maybe I had clicked the wrong payment option, but something didn't feel right. I confronted him about it the next time we met. "Ben, I noticed a withdrawal from your account. I think it was for the console I mentioned last night," I said, trying to keep my tone casual but my heart racing a little. "Oh, that," Ben responded, brushing it off with a grin. "I forgot to tell you. I actually bought it for you as a gift. You know, for being such a good friend. It was supposed to be a surprise. Sorry if I didn't mention it sooner." I smiled weakly, trying to act like I wasn't bothered. But deep down, something felt off. I wasn't sure what it was. Maybe the fact that he hadn't asked me if I wanted it, or maybe because he'd never mentioned anything about buying me a gift in the first place. Either way, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The next few weeks passed in a haze of strange occurrences. I started noticing small items missing from my apartment, an expensive pair of headphones, a jacket I loved, and even a few electronics I had kept in a drawer. I'd ask Ben about them, but he always had an explanation. "Oh, I borrowed them," he'd say. "I'll bring them back to you soon." And yet, they never seemed to return. I started to feel paranoid, like I was imagining things. I considered the possibility that I was just forgetful or that maybe I had misplaced my belongings. But then, one evening, as I was cleaning out my closet, I found something that stopped me cold. At the back of my closet, hidden behind some old jackets and shoes, was a small pile of things I hadn't seen in months. My headphones, my jacket, a few other items that I knew had gone missing over time. My heart pounded as I realized that they weren't misplaced at all. Ben had taken them. I felt a surge of anger and betrayal flood through me. How could I have been so blind? How long had this been going on? The thought that my best friend had been stealing from me for so long, right under my nose, was almost too much to bear. I couldn't let it go any longer. I needed to confront him. The decision to confront Ben was one of the hardest choices I had ever made. I had been friends with him for so long, shared so many experiences, that the idea of confronting him about the thefts felt almost impossible. He was supposed to be my closest friend, the person I trusted more than anyone else. Yet, here I was, staring at the pile of stolen items that he had hidden away, wondering how I had missed the signs. I spent the rest of the evening packing around my apartment, trying to decide how to approach him. I knew I couldn't let this go. This wasn't just about the money or the missing items anymore. This was about betrayal. It was about the fact that someone I had let into my life, someone I had trusted deeply, had been taking from me without hesitation. What hurt more than anything was the realization that Ben wasn't just taking material things. He had been taking my trust, my friendship, piece by piece, without me ever knowing. I tried to remind myself of the good times we'd shared, the way he had always been there for me when I needed him, the way he had made me laugh during tough moments. But none of that seemed to matter now. What mattered was that I had been deceived, and I needed answers. Finally, I decided to text Ben. I didn't want to accuse him outright over the phone. I needed to give him a chance to explain himself. I needed to see if there was any ounce of sincerity left in our friendship, or if it had all been a lie. "Hey Ben, I need to talk to you. It's important." It didn't take long for him to reply. He was always quick to respond, always available when I needed him. It was part of what had made me trust him so much in the first place. "Sure, what's up? Can we talk tonight?" "Yeah, come over at 7. I'll be home." What? The response was almost too quick, too casual. It was as if he didn't even hesitate. But that didn't matter right now. I had to get to the bottom of this. The evening seemed to drag on forever as I waited for him to arrive. My heart was pounding in my chest, and my mind kept replaying all the conversations we had had over the years, trying to piece together any clues I had missed. I knew Ben better than anyone, but now, with everything that had been revealed, I wondered how well I really knew him at all. When the doorbell finally rang, I felt a lump form in my throat. I opened the door to find Ben standing there, his usual smile on his face, holding a six-pack of beer, as if nothing was wrong. For a moment, I almost second-guessed myself. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation for everything. But as I looked at him, I saw past the familiar smile, past the easygoing charm. I saw the man who had stolen from me, who had betrayed my trust in ways I wasn't even sure I could forgive. "Hey man," Ben said, stepping inside. "Got us some beers. Thought we could just relax and talk. What's going on?" I closed the door behind him, my stomach churning. "We need to talk about something," I said, my voice steady but cold. "Something serious." Ben put the beers on the counter and turned to face me, sensing the change in my tone. "What's up? You're making it sound like something's wrong." "It is wrong," I said, my voice hardening. "Ben, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Have you been taking things from me?" His eyes widened, and for a split second I could see the flicker of guilt cross his face, but he quickly masked it, forcing a laugh. "What are you talking about, man? You're acting like I'm some kind of thief. What do you mean, taking things?" "I mean my stuff," I said, my tone unwavering. "I've been noticing things missing from my apartment. My headphones, my jacket, some electronics, and I found them hidden in the back of my closet. You've been taking them, Ben. Don't lie to me." For the first time in years, I saw Ben's facade crack. His expression faltered and his eyes darted to the floor. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He looked like he was searching for an excuse, for something to say that would make it all better, but there was nothing. I didn't let him off the hook. I know what's been going on. I saw the missing stuff in my closet, and I saw the money. You've been borrowing it from me, telling me you pay me back, but you never do. I've been so damn blind, but not anymore. This ends now. Ben ran a hand through his hair, his body tense. Look, he started, but I interrupted him. Ben, stop. I'm not asking for excuses. I just want to know why. Why did you do this? We've been friends for so long. Why would you steal from me? My voice cracked with a mix of disbelief and hurt. He finally looked up at me, his eyes filled with shame. For a moment, he said nothing, just stood there, as if trying to figure out how to explain the unexplainable. Listen, man, Ben began, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I really didn't. But I've been struggling. I've been in a bad place for a while. I've been living paycheck to paycheck and I just... No, I cut him off. No, don't give me that. You've had your problems, Ben, we all have. But that doesn't give you the right to take from me. You could have come to me, you could have asked for help, but instead you chose to steal. And you've been doing it for months, maybe longer. You've been lying to me the whole time. Ben's face twisted with guilt, and for the first time I saw a flicker of the person I once knew, the person who had been my friend. I never wanted to hurt you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I never wanted you to find out like this. I didn't know how to ask you for help, and I didn't want you to see me as weak, but I got desperate. I started borrowing, and then it just kept going. I couldn't stop. I took a deep breath, the weight of everything settling heavily on my chest. Ben, this isn't about desperation anymore. This is about trust. You violated that trust, and I don't know if I can ever get it back. You've been stealing from me for months, and every time you lied to me about it, you pushed me further away. I don't know if I can just forgive you like that. He shook his head, his eyes filling with tears. I understand if you can't forgive me. I don't deserve it, but I need you to know I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't know how to handle things. I thought I could fix it on my own, but I couldn't. I'm so sorry. I stood there looking at him, feeling the weight of his words, but also the weight of my own emotions. Part of me wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that his actions had been out of desperation, and that he truly regretted what he had done. But another part of me couldn't let go of the hurt, the feeling of betrayal that hung in the air like a thick fog. I don't know what to say, I replied, my voice quiet. I don't know if I can just forget this, Ben. I don't know if I can trust you again. Ben stepped forward, his voice pleading. Please, just give me a chance. I know I've messed up, but I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. I'll pay you back, I swear. I'll do anything. Just don't cut me out of your life. I didn't know what to do. For so long, Ben had been my closest friend. We had shared everything. Our dreams, our failures, our fears. But now I was staring at the wreckage of what had once been a strong, unbreakable bond. The trust that we had built was gone, and I wasn't sure if it could ever be repaired. I need time, Ben, I said, my voice breaking. I need time to think. This isn't something I can just forgive overnight. I can't forget what you've done, and I don't know if I can move past it. He nodded, his face full of regret. I understand. I'll give you the space you need. I just hope one day you can forgive me. I watched as Ben turned and left the apartment, leaving me standing in the quiet aftermath of our conversation. The truth had come out, but it hadn't brought the relief I had expected. Instead, it had left me with more questions. Could I forgive him? Could I ever trust him again? Or was this the end of our friendship, of everything we had built together? I didn't know, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't ignore what had happened. And I couldn't go back to the way things were, not until I had figured out who I could trust, and if I could ever trust him again. The night Ben left my apartment, I was left in a state of shock, the weight of everything crashing down on me all at once. For the first time in my life, I questioned everything about my relationship with him. Was the last decade of friendship a lie? Were those moments of shared joy, laughter, and support real? Or was I just a pawn in some elaborate game he had been playing all along? I didn't have the answers, and I wasn't sure if I would ever get them. I spent that night in a daze. The quiet of the apartment felt overwhelming, oppressive, like the walls were closing in around me. The usual comforting hum of city life outside my window, the distant sound of traffic, the murmur of voices on the street, all of it seemed so far away, disconnected from the emotional storm raging within me. My apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a reminder of betrayal. The things I had taken for granted, the small gestures of trust that had come so naturally, felt impossible now. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind constantly drifting back to the day I'd confronted Ben. His face, his apology, the desperation in his eyes, it all played out in an endless loop. I didn't know if I could believe him. Could I trust that his remorse was genuine? Or was it just another manipulation to get me to let him back in? I had no idea. The next few days were a blur of internal turmoil. I went about my routine, but it all felt hollow. My friends had noticed that something was off, but they didn't know the whole story. I couldn't bring myself to share the details with them. How could I explain what had happened when I couldn't even fully understand it myself? All I knew was that my world had been upended in a way I never could have imagined. I didn't hear from Ben for a few days after our conversation. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe I thought he'd come to his senses and try to make things right. Maybe he would apologize again, promise to change, beg for my forgiveness. Instead, there was just silence. And for a while, that silence was the most agonizing part. I couldn't tell if he was giving me the space I had asked for, or if he was just avoiding the consequences of his actions. But then, about a week later, I received a text message from him. "I know I've messed up, I get that, but I need you to understand that I never wanted to hurt you. You've been my closest friend and I can't just walk away from that. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. I owe you that much." I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity. My heart wavered between anger and sorrow, confusion and longing. I didn't know if I was ready to forgive him. I didn't even know if I could ever trust him again. But the reality was, Ben wasn't just some acquaintance. He was my best friend, someone I had spent years with. Our shared history was long and deep, and it made it hard to just walk away without looking back. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I took a walk around the city to clear my head. I wandered through the streets, not really paying attention to where I was going. I needed to be alone to think. I hadn't realized just how much I had built my life around Ben until he was no longer part of it. My thoughts kept returning to the moment he had taken something from me, not just the material items, but something far more valuable, my trust. And once that trust was broken, it felt impossible to repair. After a long walk, I found myself sitting in a quiet park, trying to breathe through the feelings of hurt and betrayal. I had always believed in second chances. I believed that people could change, that they could grow, and that friendships could survive even the deepest wounds. But this wasn't just about a simple mistake. This was about a breach of trust that cut deep into the foundation of everything we had shared. Could I really rebuild what had been shattered? Could I ever look at Ben the same way again? The truth was, I didn't know. I didn't have the answers, but I did know that I had to make a decision. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, stuck between the past and the present. I had to decide whether or not I could move forward with him in my life, or if it was time to cut ties completely. When I finally got home, I sat down and typed out a message to Ben. It was hard to find the right words, but I knew I needed to be honest with him. "I don't know what to say, Ben. You've been my best friend for so long, and what you've done has shaken me to my core. I can't just pretend like nothing happened. I need time to think about everything. I need to figure out if I can forgive you, but right now, I don't know if I can." I hit send, knowing it wasn't the answer he wanted, but it was the truth. I wasn't ready to forgive him, not yet. I wasn't ready to let him back into my life without understanding why he had done this and how he could make things right. The next few days were filled with more internal conflict. I kept replaying everything Ben had said to me, his apology, his promises to change, his plea for forgiveness. But every time I thought about it, the anger bubbled up inside me. I had trusted him with everything. And yet, when it came down to it, he had taken from me without a second thought. The betrayal wasn't just about the material things. It was about the fact that he had used my trust against me. Finally, after much soul-searching, I decided to meet him again. This time, it would be face-to-face. I needed to see his sincerity, to hear his side of the story in person. I couldn't keep living with this uncertainty hanging over me. It was time to confront him, once and for all. We met at the same cafe where we had shared countless conversations over the years. Ben was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table, his eyes fixed on the door. When he saw me, he stood up, his expression a mixture of hope and apprehension. "Hey," he said, his voice softer than I had ever heard it before. "I'm glad you agreed to meet." I nodded, taking a seat across from him. "I need answers, Ben. I need to understand why you did what you did. Why you lied to me, why you took from me. I thought you were my friend." He sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't expect you to just forget about what I've done, but I need you to understand. I didn't want to hurt you. I never wanted to steal from you. I was just—" he paused, trying to find the right words. "I was in a really bad place, and I was too proud to ask for help." "I don't get it, Ben," I said, shaking my head. "We've been through everything together. You could have asked me for help, but instead you chose to steal from me, to take things I trusted you with. You betrayed me, and I don't know how to look past that." "I was ashamed," he said, his voice breaking. "I didn't want you to see me as weak. I didn't want you to know how bad things had gotten. I was drowning and I didn't know what else to do. I thought I could get by on my own, but I couldn't, and I didn't know how to tell you." I sat there in silence, listening to him, trying to process everything he was saying. Part of me wanted to reach out, to comfort him, to tell him it was okay. But another part of me was still too hurt, too angry to let go of the betrayal. "I don't know if I can just forgive you, Ben," I said finally, my voice quiet. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again. It's not just about the things you took, it's about everything you hid from me, everything you lied about." "I understand," he said, his eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I will spend the rest of my life trying to earn it. I'll do whatever it takes." I stared at him for a long time, trying to decide if I could believe him, if I could somehow find it in my heart to forgive him. But the truth was, I didn't know. All I knew was that I couldn't keep living in the past. I had to make a choice. I had to decide if Ben was worth the risk of letting him back into my life, or if the damage had been done beyond repair. "I need time," I said finally. "I need time to think. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I need to figure it out for myself." Ben nodded, his face filled with regret. "I understand. I'll give you all the time you need." As I left the cafe, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to believe that Ben could change, that he could redeem himself. But another part of me knew that trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild. The journey ahead would be long, and I didn't know where it would lead. But for the first time in a long time, I knew that I had to make the decision for myself. It was no longer just about Ben. It was about my own healing, my own sense of security, and whether I could ever trust him again. The weeks following my confrontation with Ben felt like an emotional roller coaster. Every time I thought I had a handle on things, something inside me would stir, and the questions would return. Could I forgive him? Could I truly move forward and rebuild our friendship? Or would the betrayal always linger in the background, poisoning everything that had once been pure between us? I found myself drifting between moments of clarity and confusion. Part of me, the part that had known Ben for years, wanted to believe that he could change. He had apologized so sincerely, and I saw the guilt in his eyes. I heard the remorse in his voice when he spoke, and for a fleeting moment, I believed that he was genuine, that he truly regretted what he had done. But there was another part of me, the part that felt betrayed and hurt, that kept asking, how can I ever trust him again? He had taken so much more than just material things. He had taken my trust, my sense of security, and my belief in the bond we had shared. How could I move past that? And even if I did, could I ever look at him the same way? I spent hours, sometimes days, reflecting on everything that had happened. I couldn't escape the feeling that my life had been upended, that something irreversible had occurred, and I wasn't sure if I could ever go back to what it was. My thoughts were a constant whirlwind, and I found it difficult to focus on anything else. At work, I was distracted, and when I was with other friends, I couldn't shake the images of Ben's face, his pleading apology, the guilt he wore like a heavy cloak. It wasn't just the material things he had stolen. It was the betrayal of the years we had spent together, the trust that had been built and destroyed in a matter of months. I thought about all the things we had shared, the inside jokes, the late-night conversations, the countless moments where I had trusted him with my most vulnerable thoughts. And now, all of it felt like a lie. How had I been so blind to the signs? How could I not have seen what he was doing, even as he asked for more, borrowed more, and slowly drained the trust I had in him? The decision I was facing wasn't just about forgiving him. It was about understanding if I could ever look at him as the friend I once knew, or if he had changed into someone unrecognizable. It was about figuring out if the love and loyalty I had for him were enough to heal the wound he had caused. One day I received a message from him. It was simple, but the timing was significant. I've been thinking a lot about everything. I don't want to pressure you, but I miss our friendship. I'll respect whatever decision you make, but I want you to know I'm here. I've been working on myself, trying to be a better person. I hope you'll consider giving me another chance. I stared at the message for a long time, my fingers hovering over the keyboard as I tried to figure out what to say. I had told him that I needed time, and he had given it to me. But time hadn't made things clearer. It had only deepened the confusion. I had been trying to move on, trying to rebuild my life after everything that had happened, but Ben was still a constant presence in my thoughts. Could I give him another chance? Did I even want to? That evening, I decided to meet him again. I wasn't sure what I expected, maybe some form of closure, or maybe I just needed to see him face to face one last time to understand where we stood. Whatever it was, I knew I couldn't avoid this any longer. I couldn't live in limbo, constantly questioning my choices, unsure of what I wanted from this relationship. We met at the same cafe where we had talked before. When I walked in, I saw Ben sitting at our usual spot. His posture was slumped, his hands nervously folding and unfolding the napkin in front of him. He looked up when he saw me, and for a moment, his eyes were filled with hope that I had made my decision and that it would be in his favor. "Hey," I said, sitting down across from him. "Thanks for meeting me." "Of course," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "I've been waiting for this moment. I know I've messed up, but I'm ready to make things right, Rachel." I nodded, trying to maintain my composure. I couldn't let my emotions control the conversation. I needed clarity. "I've been thinking about everything," I began. "I've been thinking about what you said, about your apology, and about the years we've known each other, and I've come to a conclusion." Ben's eyes flickered with anticipation. What conclusion? I took a deep breath, knowing this was the hardest thing I'd ever say. "I can't forgive you right now, Ben. I don't know if I ever will. You've hurt me in ways I didn't think were possible. I trusted you with things that I shouldn't have had to question, and you violated that trust. I don't know how to move forward from that." His face fell, and for a moment it seemed like he couldn't breathe. His eyes were pleading with me, but I couldn't give him what he wanted, not yet. Maybe not ever. "I understand," he whispered, his voice shaking. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, Rachel, I don't. But I just want you to know from the bottom of my heart I'm sorry. I don't want to lose you. You've been everything to me, and I've been too stupid to see that until now." "I know you're sorry, Ben, and I know that this is hard," I replied, my voice tight. "But sometimes being sorry isn't enough. Sometimes the damage is too deep. I don't know if I can look at you the same way again." I paused, watching the weight of my words settle in between us. For a long time, Ben didn't speak. He just sat there, looking at me as though he were trying to come to terms with what I had said. His face was a mixture of sadness and regret, but there was also a spark of determination in his eyes. "I get it," he finally said. "You don't owe me anything. You don't owe me forgiveness, and you don't owe me a second chance. I can't change what I did. I can't undo the damage I've caused, and I know that. But I want you to know, Rachel, that I've learned from this. I will never make these mistakes again with you or anyone else. I'm sorry for every lie, every stolen moment, every time I made you question our friendship. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you." I looked at him for a long time, my heart heavy. I had spent so many years with him, and now it felt like that connection was being ripped apart. It was impossible to ignore the good times we had shared, the laughter, the memories. But those moments had been built on a foundation of trust, and that foundation had crumbled. "I don't know if I can give you that second chance, Ben," I said softly, my voice breaking. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again, but maybe one day we can find a way to rebuild. Maybe we can both grow from this, even if it means we're not the same people we were." Ben nodded slowly, the weight of my words sinking in. He didn't try to argue with me, didn't beg for my forgiveness. He simply sat there, the silence between us filled with the enormity of what had just been said. I could see the pain in his eyes, the understanding that our friendship had irrevocably changed. "I'll wait, Rachel," he said quietly. "I'll wait as long as it takes. I'm not going anywhere, but I understand if you can't be there for me right now." I stood up, my heart aching as I looked at him one last time. "I need time, more than you think, but I hope someday we can figure this out. For now, I need to heal." With that, I walked away. Ben didn't follow me. He didn't call out. He didn't try to change my mind. And as I left the cafe, I realized that I had made the hardest decision of my life. I wasn't sure if I would ever forgive him. I wasn't sure if I could ever trust him again. But I knew one thing: I couldn't continue down this road without first finding my own peace, my own healing. It wasn't the ending I had imagined for our friendship. But sometimes, the hardest thing you can do is let go of someone you thought would always be there. And sometimes, the hardest thing you can do is admit that the person you loved is no longer the person you thought they were.